Awesome. Let's do it. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Mastermind. It's definitely a little bit of a different format than we usually do, but I'm super pumped because needed a blast of good energy and ideas and inspiration. So I immediately thought of my buddy, Rob Hampton, to come on and have a chat this week. As anybody that knows me through Fons and through this group knows that I refer to this guy a lot as somebody that I am inspired by and I'm close to and I really respect and I've known for a very long time. So today what we're going to do is I'm going to basically have a conversation with Rob about what he does and how he does it. And I think you're going to take a lot of inspiration from it, regardless of what you do. Rob is a guitar teacher and a business owner, and but he's also just a savvy human being. And the principles we're going to talk about today can really apply to anything you do. So welcome. Note today it's going to be more of a webinar format. So if you have questions, if you have comments, go ahead and throw them in the chat box. We're going to make sure to have time to answer those at the end. So that is going to be how it's going to work today. I'm really glad to see you here. So let me introduce Rob to you. Rob, I've known for over 15 years. And Rob is an epic guitar teacher. I think it's safe to say he's one of the most successful guitar teachers in the country or the world as far as how he runs his business and the value he provides. And the things we're going to try to extract from him today is kind of how he does that and how he got this great sense of confidence that allowed him to build this really successful business. I learned of Rob when I was first starting to teach at a music school with a group of other teachers looking at Rob's website in the early 2000s called Heartwood Guitar. And we were all amazed that he was charging 2 to 3 times as much as any of us were charging. And we were like, who is this guy? This guy must suck. He's the worst. And then he had a 2-year waiting list. And I was like, oh man, I didn't have a waiting list. And I knew that at that point, I was like, he sounds intimidating. I hope I never run across this guy. And then, down the road, we got to know each other, and, we see each other every week as part of a business group that we share and support and encourage each other. We've been doing that for years. So Rob is a world-class guitar teacher, and his niche is he has very affluent client base that are very dedicated to working with him. He also runs a website called Heartwood Guitar that's another way that he instructs people to teach on a more scalable level that gets really great web traffic. He's been doing it for a really long time. And spun off of that, he has a subscription-based learning program. He also coaches music teachers on how to run great recitals. He does these epic recitals with other local music teachers that I know he's going to want to talk about. So that's my experience of knowing Rob. Rob, I want to just go ahead and let you hop in here and maybe say hi, introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll just kind of get cranking on. So Rob, welcome to our group. I'm so glad you're here. And how's it going, man?
Good, good. Thank you for that very generous introduction. Woo, I'll try to live up to that picture you painted. Anyway, thanks for having me on, and nice to see everyone here. I see a lot of familiar names. So yeah, thanks for showing up, guys. I hope it ends up being worth your while.
Cool. Well, Rob, let's just jump in.
Okay.
I think the thing that I want to just kind of get out of the way is first off, it's like, what are you working on right now? Like, what's going on in your universe? What are your current projects you're doing? Just so people can kind of get an idea of what an entrepreneurial person working in a private service-based industry, they get that up and running. I want to come back to the idea of the value and your lessons business, but what are you focused on right now? What are you spending your time on?
Wow. Well, to be like perfectly transparent, I've been injured for the past like almost 2 months, repetitive stress injury with my arms. So I'm learning how to continue to be useful to my students while still healing. So tons of physical therapy, a lot of like swallowing my pride as I tell my students sometimes like I can't actually play this thing I want to teach you right now. That's just like personally, emotionally challenging thankfully, most of my students play at a level that most of them are kind of beginners to intermediate level, and I've already learned most of the stuff that I'm teaching them, and I'm finding that, especially in this medium where you can't accompany your students, I can really there aren't very many times where I feel like I'm limited in my ability to teach them. So that's one challenge I'm dealing with right now. And a lot of my creative energy I'm putting into heartwithguitar.com, which where I sell memberships. People pay a monthly or yearly fee to access premium instructional content to learn how to be better guitar players. And so a lot of my creative energy right now is going into developing new content for my members and learning how to market to my members better. Yeah, doing a lot of work with my family too. I have 3 little kids, and so we're looking at maybe homeschooling this fall, and so my wife and I are
Woo!
planning for that and doing a lot of personal finance work.
Living.
Yeah, that's kind of how I spend my work day, is focusing on those things. And then private lessons, I teach about 15 hours a week or so. Yeah, about 15 hours a week right now over Zoom, teaching my private students.
So let me jump in to make sure that I categorize this right and what we want to talk about. So right now, you're at your core of your business, and I want to cut to this chase right away. Is everybody know you're the person that has this amazing list of clients. You've been doing this has it always been that way? Like that, you charge a lot, you make a great living, you probably charge 2 or 3 times what most guitar teachers charge. Yet you've always had a waiting list, and you end up with the most amazing clients. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because that's the thing, I think, when I talk about you, one of my things when I'm talking to anybody coming on the Fons platform, where I talk to about anything to do with business, it's like, oh my gosh, you've got to charge more. You've got to have some self-respect. Yeah. If you want to get, and that's a marketing plan, right? If your marketing strategy is to differentiate yourself by charging a better rate, it works. And I learned that from you. You were one of the people that I saw that be effective for, and this was 13 years ago. And I've been riding on that ever since. So how did that come to you? Maybe just go a little bit into your background. I know you went, your background's in education, but maybe take a second to just talk about that journey of your guitar studio as a private guitar teacher.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking about this question. You sent me this list of questions you were going to ask yesterday, and I was mulling over this one a lot. In particular, thinking about, the current global movement we've been wrapped up in lately regarding issues of race and privilege, civil rights issues, things like that. And as I was driving into work this morning, I was just kind of going through the list of all the lucky advantages, all the privileges that I've had in my life that have made all the stuff you're talking about a little easier. And I think, it's important to be aware of those things, that being born male and white, and going to schools where I kind of become accustomed to like how to relate to people who have money and who are educated and have power and everything. All that stuff helps you be more successple in business.
And this is Stanford you're talking about, is that?
Yeah, going to Stanford was helpful. While my parents didn't grow up wealthy, my dad was a Illinois pig farmer during the Depression. They both valued education, and my mom was kind of middle class. My dad made money through investing and also inherited some money from an uncle at some point that kind of helped him get started with investing, and poured a lot of that money into his kids' educations. And so even though I didn't necessarily, was not necessarily born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was in that world growing up of going to private schools, and yeah, I went to Stanford to study education. So all that stuff really helps, and I don't want to belabor the topic because I don't think it's like super helpful to other music teachers just to hear about the ways that they may or may not have advantages in that sense, because a lot of the stuff that I like to teach other music teachers, stuff that all of it is stuff you have control over. And so I want to focus on that. But I just felt like I should
Sure.
mention that because,
It's important.
the odds are stacked differently in people's favor depending on, the situation they grew up in. And I think for a good deal of my life, I wasn't really aware of those things, and I thought like I just like kind of had it figured out. And as I get older, I realized no, some of this, a good deal of it, has to do with luck. But let's focus on the other part too, because it's not all luck.
Yeah. And so you got out of Stanford. You were a school teacher, right?
Yes, yeah. So I thought I wanted to be a high school English teacher for most of my life, and music was just a hobby. Um, and I taught English for 3 years in the classroom, and I was terrible at it. Oh man, it was a miserable 3 years, and I gave it 3 years, and then I just decided this is not for me, and I just kind of foundered for a couple years, dabbling in this and that. I was Seattle's worst handyman for a little while. I did some freelance writing, thinking I wanted to be a journalist. And I also started doing some things that I had let go by the wayside when I was so consumed with classroom teaching. And one of those things was playing in a rock band. I played in like a Grateful Dead cover band in college, and I wanted to have some of that fun again. And so I was in band rehearsal with my friends one day, and the lead singer, who also teaches guitar, suggested that I try it. And this was when I was doing handyman work, and I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And it was just like this light bulb went off. And so I discovered that I did have an advantage in that I had a background in education, so I knew how to teach pretty well. And I have some gifts in teaching. Unfortunately, I do not have gifts in teaching 30 kids at the same time, I found out. I just got so
Sure.
overwhelmed. But teaching one-on-one, I found out I was really good at it, and I loved it. It was so fun. I would have done it for free, just for fun at that point. Um, I did not have great musical skills. And I had to kind of deal with for a while, kind of feeling like a hack as I got started teaching guitar. But I just continued to work on my music education, my own skills, my own art as I grew my teaching business, and was able to keep one step ahead of my students. And now I have a lot more confidence in my ability to teach music. But when I was starting out, it was just total beginners, and I was just teaching them how to strum chords and stuff.
And how long did you do that? Like when did that corner change? Or did,
Yeah, so one of the little bits of luck that I had was, I started my business when the web was like the Wild West. This was like 2003, and I'd taken a class in HTML in grad school, and so knew my way around the web a little bit, and I built Heartwood Guitar in 2003 just to advertise my private lessons. And
wait,
I
so let me stop. The
yeah,
goal of Heartwood was initially to advertise private lessons.
yeah, it was like my business
Oh,
card.
okay, cool. I don't think I ever
Yeah.
knew that. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah, I did not begin Heartwood Guitar thinking that it would be what it became.
okay.
Um, which is also pretty lucky, right? Usually, if you want to get to a destination, it helps if you point in that direction. And I really didn't have a direction, but but what I did do is I learned a little bit about search engine optimization, and I knew that if I had some interesting content on the site, it would boost my search rankings. So I got pretty obsessed about boosting my rankings as a Seattle guitar teacher, so that when people Googled like Seattle guitar lessons, I would come up first in Google. And I was able to get to that place, and it was just like this fire hose of new students coming at me. And so I was able to raise my rates from like the going rate, which was like 40 or $50 an hour, to about $80 an hour, which at that time seemed like kind of the top end
And
of what
wait,
people would be willing to pay.
this would have been in what year? 2004, 2005?
Yeah.
That's when I was stuck in American music, sitting over the shoulder at that big computer with the other teachers, being like, "Who is this guy charging $80 an hour
Yeah.
with a 2-year waiting list?" Okay, got it. So the website started building you traffic, and then you just, what was the moment where you were like, "Okay, I'm doubling my rates, or I'm going to do it"?
Yeah.
And what gave you the confidence? No one was doing that then.
Yeah.
That was unheard of then.
Yep.
There were, I know that in the guitar world, Sharon Isbin was this famous classical guitar teacher, and she was $1 a minute. And that was like the thing that people were like, "What? A
Yeah.
dollar a minute for guitar lessons from somebody at Juilliard? Like, what? That's crazy." And you
Yeah.
came in and you shattered that, and it just made you really busy. And this was like a decade before people were starting to really do that.
Yep. Yeah. So I love this story. So um, there are two things. One was staring at my waiting list and just thinking about supply and demand, right? So I was getting like new lesson inquiries a couple times a week at the peak, and that went on for months. And my waiting list grew and grew and grew, and I was looking at my $40 an hour rate, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I need to raise my rates. And it was scary, but I'd already had some experience charging people money doing handyman work, charging $20 an hour. So running your own business, you got to get used to being able to like not stutter when you quote someone your rate, right? And so that takes practice and building confidence. And so I looked at the supply and demand, and I knew that just from a pure business perspective, I should raise my rates, even though $80 an hour seemed like a lot. But what also gave me confidence, besides all these other things that I talked about, those subtle things of, growing up in a relatively wealthy part of the country, growing up having the privilege of being male and white. I also had this friend, my friend Ryan Turner, who worked in the corporate world. He was like working at Gates Foundation at the time. And so he was around money a lot, working for this nonprofit organization owned by, at the time, the richest person in the universe. And he was helping me build my website. He knew a little bit more about web design than I did. And so we were putting together Heartwood Guitar. I remember I was at his house, at his PC, and and I didn't know anything about branding. I don't even think I knew what that term meant. And he was like, "So what do you want to, like, what kind of students do you want to have?" And I'm like, what I don't want is like the guitar lesson that's in like a stinky crowded room with no windows with someone who's just barely making it. Like, I want to give a great experience to people. And I'd also like, even at that time, I was like, if I could turn this into a career and like support a family doing this, that would be heaven. And I knew that like music teachers didn't make much money in general, so I would need to like think differently. And so I was like, I want to be an awesome guitar teacher that charges top dollar. And in the back of my head, I was like, I also want to serve a lot of people, and I don't want to just teach rich people. I mean, I was trained to be a public school teacher, and I taught in one of the poorest inner city schools in San Francisco for a year, and was terrible at it. Didn't really help my students that much, but my heart was still there. Like, I still wanted to give back to my community, and be accessible to a lot of people. But I knew that if I was like, worried about paying my electric bill every month, I wouldn't be able to help people too. And so I was thinking, well, I could make a lot of money and then hopefully would have enough room in my life to then be able to give back. So I told him I wanted to charge top dollar. And then I like tried to think of the biggest number I could think of, and I was like, I want to charge $80 an hour. And he turns to me, I still remember this. He turns to me and he's like, "Dude, you should charge twice that much. You should teach Bill Gates kids." And I was just like, and Ryan was like one of these friends who's also kind of a mentor. He's kind of like you, Eric, like one of these people who which just was always doing amazing things, and I really looked up to. And it was really, I think, if there was one moment where I got the confidence to charge a lot of money for lessons, it was that power of suggestion from a friend. You
Hmm.
should charge twice that much. You should teach Bill Gates kids. And so a couple years later, when I got a call from someone who obviously wasn't the mother of of the children who wanted lessons, it really sounded like it was a personal assistant who was calling me. I was at guitar camp at the time, and I'm like, I had this little thought in the back of my head. I'm like, am I talking to Bill Gates' personal assistant? And this was at a time when my business was still growing a lot, but I wasn't really teaching super wealthy people. And so I just kind of, tried to play it cool. And I was at guitar camp, so I was in a great mood. And I think I did a great job on the phone call. And then about a week later, I talked to the mother and did some Google stalking. And I found out that I was going to teach Jeff Bezos's kids. And so that was a big like breakout moment for me. But I was kind of ready for it because of the suggestion that my friend Ryan gave me. So if I can do one thing to help the people who are on the conversation right now, let me just do the same thing for you, okay? I'm going to look down the list. Aaron, Angela, Angie, Chris, etc. You should charge twice that much. You should work for Bill Gates' kids. There.
Yes.
Hopefully that helps because it sure helped me.
Well, that is an awesome story, and I'm so glad you shared it. But let me repackage it into what you said. That's really important because I went through the same thing. I'd followed you for a while. We were starting a family. I was either going to go to law school, get an MBA, or I had to make twice as much money. And I had a business mentor too that I taught that said, "Dude, double your rates." And I doubled my rates, and 8 weeks later, I had a waiting list. And at that point, that was 2008. And I was, then I think that's when I went to $80. I've always been a little behind you in that. And it worked. It worked. It's the moment I did it, everything was free. And I know we talk about this all the time, but there's another caveat. And it's something that I see. And the reason that you're here, Rob, and I wanted to have you here for this conversation is you love doing it, right? So yes, you're teaching the people that you're teaching because you love doing it and you provide them value, right? And you need to be honest with yourself if it's something that actually makes you happy and if it's something you think you're awesome at and you think that you're really connecting with people and providing value. When I look in a lot of the groups and see people just so burned out, and I wonder, I'm like, are you burned out because you're not making enough money and you're not able to get that energy going that you need to invest in a new student? I taught 2 new students yesterday. I didn't know it was going to be 2 siblings showing up to the same meet and greet.
Yeah.
I was just in it. I was on fire. I was like, okay. I got off that 30-minute meet and greet, and I'd entertained the nanny, who was an opera singer, the 2 children, and the parent. And I got off and I was like, I crushed that. And I was like, I'm exhausted. I was like, because it's what I do. I love connecting with people. I'm going to teach till I die. It's great, meaningful, awesome work. And you love it, and that energy is real, and you can't really fake it, right? Your path into what your career happened organically, right? The website took off. You loved what you did. You tried something else. A large group didn't work. And I think it's important that like everybody can't just copy, what you're doing or what I'm doing. You have to be authentic. And there are other ways to generate income too. And it's something that like in every interaction I have these days, one of the things I'm putting my feelers out is I'm like, is this person feeling it? Like, should you be doing this work? Because sometimes you need to say, maybe something else is a better fit, or maybe it's just as simple as you need to tweak it. And I guess the hypothesis is like, do you love what you do because you do it? Or like in your case, do you love what you do because you know that you're still getting paid enough to love it, right? You have an awesome job, but you've set it up to where you are getting paid to love it. So even if you're having a tough day teaching, you walk out of one of those lessons, you're like, well, I just made a couple $100, whatever it was that I charged for this lesson. And you're like, that's work. Like some days I'm going to nail it, some days I won't, but I'm getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, that you mentioned is this idea of like demographic and area. Every locale has the kind of clients that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you are awesome, if you are the best and you present the best value and you often are the most expensive, that's how those people will find you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they want to be close to that energy of like, I want my kids to work with, Rob Hampton or Eric Brand or whoever, because to them, they see that value, and money is different to them. Like the advice that you got from your friend, it's so true. Like it wouldn't really matter what you charged to one of the founders of Amazon or Microsoft,
Mm-hmm. As long as
right?
they didn't feel like they were getting gouged
As
by
long as they
the
didn't feel like you were taking advantage of them, because they want you to succeed.
mm-hmm.
And then that kind of leads us into, that's your core business, and you've crushed it better than there's no one that's done that better than you have, right? That's kind of the thing you locked in for whatever reason it was, and you continue to lock it in. um, and lots of people in our industry now are starting to see that and elevating themselves, and I feel like a lot of it's self-confidence, a lot of it's mentorship, a lot of it's them creating a niche for themselves. And that's why I tag you in so many. I tag you in a lot of posts.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, talk to Rob Hampton, you can do this, you're awesome. So I love that story. I think it's important to remember that your heart has to be in it, that you deserve to make what you make, because people are willing to pay it and they keep coming back, and they keep waiting. And a really cool thing, I mean, we might segue into, and I want everybody that's here, if you have any questions for Rob, we're going to answer them before too long, so feel free to type those in, and we'll go into them. If there's something you'd be curious about, Mike, I see your question, we're going to definitely talk about that. But it's the other side. So you have your core business, which is your private lesson teaching, that and that's awesome, that is what it is. But you also have built these other products for people that might not be able to take private lessons with you,
Yeah.
right? And there are many people that's all they do. They super focus on this. I want to create something that makes me while I sleep. It's a guitar program or it's a coaching program or whatever. I'm going to build this funnel for it. But you've got this thing that allows people to study with you basically for much less than what a single private lesson would cost, right? Um, and but it also lets you reach people that you couldn't normally reach,
Yeah.
right? So what is if you have a pie chart, you've got your core business, you've got your subscription business / Heartwood Guitar. How would you divide those up as far as the energy and the focus that you have in a given day?
Most of my focus is on my private lessons. They take a lot of time, about 20 to 25 hours of work a week.
Totally.
And then I would say on average, I spend about um, 3 to 10 hours on heartwoodguitar.com on the membership site.
So a week
Yeah.
is what you work on. And with you, that same pie chart, like I'm assuming your lesson business is relatively stable, but not growing a lot, because you teach as many hours as you can.
Yeah.
And at the rate you are, you're probably pretty full,
Yeah.
for being able to go much higher. And
Yeah.
then what would you say that your revenue streams are between those two as a percentage?
So it's about 70% private lessons right now, 30% heartwoodguitar.com.
Which is similar, because that's also about the same percentage of time allocation,
Yeah.
right? But the subscriptions thing, is that something that, like, when you put time, if you doubled the time into that, do you think you could ostensibly double the impact or the revenue you're getting there? Or do you think that's kind of, I would imagine a guitar program is a pretty populated market segment.
Uh-huh. No, I can definitely increase my revenue the more time I put into it. But that the reaping the rewards of that comes over time. It takes a while to gather that revenue, because most of my members are monthly members, and so they're paying me $20 a month over the course of 10 months or so on average that they stay on with the program. And so there's a delay, but I've been running this membership, running the site as a membership platform for a year now, and it's just been kind of the slow, steady growth.
Cool.
But yeah, when I put more time into it, especially when I email my mailing list a lot, I get a big boost in members. That's the main way that I get members to the site, is gathering a mailing list and then sending them lots of free stuff, but also marketing to them.
Got it. And I think so. Those are your two core areas, and I want to take maybe just a moment to start answering some of these questions and talk about them, because there's some really good stuff coming in that I think this is stuff we talk about all the time. So Rob and I talk about this every week in this group. So, but I think these are important, and let me just jump into a couple of them really quick, Rob, if that's okay.
Cool.
Aaron wrote in, I'm worried about the pattern where more and more we all end up servants of the 0.1% that control all the wealth and don't want to accept that. That is such an awesome question. And that is something that I know we talk about and we think about all the time. And I'm glad you asked it, because I think about it all the time. But one thing that I can speak to personally is that I know it's something that we are concerned about. And I know we try to build products. I give my website, my book, all that stuff is free. The thing that happened when I doubled my rates and I started making a real living, like once I broke that 6-figure window of teaching guitar lessons, I was able to offer free and reduced guitar lessons to anybody that needed it. Money is never a barrier for me teaching somebody. If I connect with an awesome client, and I'm sure you probably realize this too, Rob, you get a client that comes in and they are, whether they're a working family or teachers, they're always the one that value the most and try to pay you first. And you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like my experience is I often have to physically offer a discount because I'm like, I know you guys are teachers too, or you're artists too, like, whatever. I feel like I was able to reach more people once I was aware of my environment, that it's just the way it is, that I can make a business where I can market to people that really have means to support my family, because that's just how the business model shook out, that I could do it, where I could make X amount of dollars and X amount of hours a week, giving me this much energy to give back, right? So my net, if my lessons were a third of the cost, I probably wouldn't have as many students, and I wouldn't be able to support myself, and I wouldn't be able to do the work I was doing. I've done programs where I go into schools and, everybody that completes a course gets a guitar. I've done that in urban schools here in Seattle. And so I think it's a great question. And I think we also have to, it's weird we have to build our models that way, but I think we can be creative and we can be really, really awesome about the overreaching work we're doing if we're compassionate about that. Would you agree with that, Rob?
Yeah, looking at the rest of this question, focuses on coaching totally matters. Almost all already privileged instead of people who really need it most. Yeah, so I think about this a lot, and I think whoops. So I raised 3 little boys, and my wife is mostly a stay-at-home mom, and we live in the Puget Sound area, which is a very expensive area, and so in order for me to continue to be a guitar teacher and to do it in a way that really sustains me, which means like private lessons, like I'm just not a good classroom teacher. The only way that I've found to do that is the way I'm currently teaching, which is to teach really wealthy people, and being able to make this business model work has enabled me to sustain Heartwood Guitar. And I have like 160 members or so who pay not very much money, like $20 a month or $190 a year, to study with me through the videos I produce. I'm able to produce a lot more instructional videos now that I'm charging for them. I used to just do them for free, but it was not sustainable. They took so much time to make, and I wasn't getting a return on my investment. So you need to be able to sustain yourself in order to be generous. And while it is true that I give most of my personal attention to really wealthy people, I'm able to help tons of other people for free every day. Like 3,000, 4,000 people a day come to Heartwood Guitar. It used to be like 14,000. to get resources for free. And I would not be able to sustain that. I couldn't pay the hosting costs for one thing. It costs a lot of money to host a site that has that much traffic. If I wasn't, making a decent living. And so I'm sure that there are other models that could work. I'm just not a brilliant enough businessman to figure out how to do that. So I look at my own ability to help other people, and I compare what I'm doing now to, like, what if I just charged $40 an hour? I would be helping about the same amount of people, making a lot less money, not being able to give my kids as much personal attention, and not being able to sustain heartwoodguitar.com, which helps ton of, like, thousands and thousands, millions of people for free or at a very low rate.
Right.
So that's how I kind of make that calculation. I'm
Yeah.
always interested to hear what other people think, though, because I know there are other ways of doing this that could potentially help more people. I just, right now, this seems like the most obvious way.
Well, the other ways to do it in this environment are to work directly or indirectly for that 0.1%, right? If you weren't doing this, we'd probably have jobs at Amazon, right? That's where we would have headed if you would have stuck with SEO.
Yeah.
And so it's I think about a lot, and I try to remind myself is that I'm running a business, right? It's like, yes, my music thing is an art-centered, heart-centered, make the world better deal that I love. And I'm responsible that it's a business, right? And it's difficult sometimes to say those words and to internalize them, but we have to be aware of our environments and see what the opportunities are. And there's the weakness we've identified is that, like, wow, it'd be great if we could just reach a ton of people and really get them what they need. And we focus on that, but we can't do that if we're not viable, right? So it's an awesome question. And I think it also goes, I mean, just I want to, because these questions are awesome and I want to keep cranking through them if I can, Rob. Angela asked, do you have different rates for your different students, or focus on the one-on-one that can afford the rate? I realize they also have the subscription option, but from personal experience, one-on-one is so much value. Do you use your subscription resources with your one-on-one students? That's a pretty awesome question. It's a little bit of a follow-up of the last one, but do your personal clients, do they ever take advantage of your subscription thing, or is that a perk of working with you? Or
It is, but most of them don't really want that. They love having my personal attention every week, and a lot of them are kids who aren't really self-directed. They're not using online resources. They're too young, or they're busy adults, who are, like, running companies and stuff, or they're business executives, and their time is really precious, and if they can get my personal attention, that's how they like to spend their music time every week. I do have variable rates for my students. I'm so happy to say that I've gotten to the point in my business where I have been able to give reduced rates to students who otherwise had to quit, like, especially with this economic downturn we're experiencing. Had a student recently who had to go to every other week lessons, and I just told his parents, well, why don't we continue going week to week and I'll charge you half rate. And it felt so good to be able to do that. Going back to that question about, just serving wealthy people. I still feel like I'm fairly limited in my ability to be generous right now, because I am the sole breadwinner of my family, and we are not, like, rolling in money. Like, it's tough to make ends meet running this business. Eric portrays my business as being, like, it'd be easy to get the impression that, like, my family's very wealthy, and while I feel very lucky, we really have to be careful with our money to make ends meet. But it was great to be able to help this one private student. And then for a lot of my other students, I just raised my rates very slowly on current students. I think that's the best approach in running a business like this, where you are raising rates sometimes by large amounts. You only do that for new incoming students. And so right now, like my long-term students are paying about half as much as the students who I've taken on recently. And I just raise the rates once a year for my current students just to kind of account for cost of living increases. And it's amazing how, if I were to raise rates more on my current students, some of them would get a little upset about it. But other students, some of whom, are not as wealthy, come in at my new much higher rate. But since that's kind of like the baseline of where they were working from, that was their expectation coming into the arrangement, they're perfectly happy to pay that rate. And so there's all this psychological stuff that goes into pricing. But yeah, I have variable rates.
Killer. Hey, you know what? I'd overlooked one that came in. It was the very first question that came in from Mike Dawson, super cool guy. Hi, Mike. He says, I have a full enrollment and I'm teaching practice for over 30 years. Any thoughts on how I change pricings for my subscriptions and if I should keep original students at a legacy rate, right? So this is, inspiration on maybe changing how he's doing. He's full. He's been doing it for, 30 years. He's definitely experienced. I know him pretty well. Thoughts on how to change your pricing for your subscriptions and if you should keep the original students at a legacy rate? I think that's something we do differently, Rob. But you were just saying.
Yeah, well, what do you do? Yeah, as I was saying, I only raise my rates a small amount on my legacy, on my original students, as he calls them.
And how do you do that when it's time for you to raise your rates? What do you do?
Yeah, so I used to do them at the first of the year, but our mutual friend Joe Walker, I think, another member of our mastermind group, pointed how people are super busy around the first of the year. And then I was thinking back to all the balls I've dropped, all the business stuff that comes through at the first of the year. And, I'm on holiday and I come back to this huge pile of mail and I forget about it. So I started doing it at the beginning of the school year, which is a little less busy time, but it's still kind of a transition period for a lot of families. I teach a lot of young people. So it's like the beginning of September every year. I send out a little, just some boilerplate that says, I'll be raising my rates by 5%. Again, this year, your new rate is this amount. And then for raising my rates on incoming students, I do it fairly arbitrarily. I just kind of look at my waiting list. I look at how full my schedule is, and every once in a while, I'm just like, okay, I think I should raise my rates again. And it's just this careful balance between keeping my schedule full and looking at how many new inquiries are coming in. And right now, I have a good equilibrium. People get in touch with me very rarely for new lessons. But on the other hand, I have a full schedule and I have very little attrition. And so, it's just like once every few months that I get a new inquiry now. But that new inquiry is willing to pay my new higher rate. And so I've reached equilibrium there.
Well, I know, Rob, there was something else that you did, and I don't really want to talk about mine because I don't usually raise rates on legacy students only because I'm a chicken and I don't put the energy into it. So let's not
at all, not even for cost of living increase.
You know what? I generally don't. It's one of my value adds where and I'm saying it's a value add because I'm a chicken and I just don't put the energy into doing it. So I'm going to spin this, but I generally keep people at the rate they come in on, and unless they've been to be a really long time, I just need to bring them up. Because I know that people are always like, well, what if Sally finds out I'm paying this much and you're paying this much? I'm like, I raise my rates consistently for new students depending on how busy I am. And with Fons, I have less and less time to teach now, right? I'm teaching like 25 students a week, which is insane. I'm not going to be able to do that in the fall. I got to cut back. So I look at the rates of my legacy students as a benefit to them, as saying, thank you for being with me for years. Because I'm a major lifetime value person. Like, how long has this person been with me? How much what kind of customer have they been? And I know if I had time, it's something I would probably focus on, but I tend to focus more on raising rates for new customers. But I wanted to just kind of tag on because, Aaron's question was so good and it really put a bug in my ear. And I just want to kind of just keep dripping into it. As I've seen your site over the years, you used to have a spot where you would recommend other teachers
Yeah.
right? And I know a ton of people have gotten a ton of students from your site, and I think you just gave them, if you're like, oh, if you can't afford to work with me, that's totally cool. This guy's awesome. This guy's awesome. I think you had 5 or 7 teachers on your website that
Yep.
you were sending leads to. And it was, I just remember thinking that was such a cool thing to do. And if you look at the big picture, yeah, you had your trip you were doing, but you were also helping out a lot of other music teachers as they were getting going, plus people like me that were looking at you like they were like, oh, this is how I'm going to be able to feed my family. And packaging that all together, it's like you're not like talking about being paid like a high priced lawyer. You're like a really good car mechanic or a master plumber, right? Or I mean, that's the same. We're talking about living wages where we live is what we're asking,
Yeah.
right? And if we want to have a scalable model, that's your subscription thing, right? Where hopefully you get to where you've got 1,000 people on there, right? Paying you, getting this great value. But I think that's a really great consideration, and also just meditation to know that what you're doing has these kind of spin-off effects. So anyway, that was a great answer to that question. Oh my gosh, I wanna, these are really fun. Is it okay if I keep drilling you with these, Rob?
Totally.
Because here's a nice one, a good question too. I have anywhere from 30 to 50 students. I teach classes at a private school during the school year, and I have a big drop in the summer, partly due to living in the desert and because a ton of snowbirds in my roster. This is looking like a better summer for sure, by the way. But my family vacations create too big of a drop in income. How do you handle vacations? Boy, Rob, how do you handle that natural drop in summertime?
Yeah. It's taken me a long time
Big
to
time.
come to grips with this cycle. I think I was kind of late to the game, realizing the degree to which the summer drop off was something I really needed to be proactive about. Um, and and I think a lot of my blindness to it was I was just so focused on growing heartwithguitar.com that whenever I'd have cancellations, I was like, okay, more time to put into the online business. And to some degree, I would say to answer the question, if you can find a another revenue stream like online instruction, and you can make enough money during the rest of the year to help get you through what we call the summer slump, you can put more time into that. Years ago, I wrote a book during the summer. Um, uh, Rob's Totally Awesome Guitar Teaching Handbook, a book I still sell on greatestgig.com. And that was a great investment in time. I think I made like $30,000 on that book. And it took about a month of work of taking time off work in the summer to write that. Um, but there are other things you can do too. A lot of music teachers, uh, artists in general, are not really interested in doing the kind of technical work it takes to teach online. Um, and um, uh, uh, I know, Eric, you've done this too. There are lots of opportunities for running camps and workshops in the summer. Parents, uh, uh, apparently, I'm just starting to enter this world with my kids, and I've never run a camp. But I think, Eric, you've seen this happen where sometime in the spring, parents, there's this rush to sign up their kids for camp experiences. And if you can organize some kind of workshop or camp experience for kids to learn music in a group setting, that can really help you through that lean time. I've looked into like destination workshops too with Joe. Our friend Joe Walker. We were looking at maybe doing something like that in the next year or two, where we go to like uh, a cool place up in the mountains and teach a workshop for a week. That would be really fun too. Eric, do you want to talk about your guitar barbecue?
Well, I was going to say, normally what I would do is this is where I'd go into my spiel about I do these camps, right? And I do camps all summer where Often in summers, I won't even do private lessons. I'll stack a camp in the morning, a camp in the afternoon. I'll make twice as much doing group camps as I do teaching privately. I do a big destination camp with my high school seniors called Camp Brand. We go up to the mountains for a week. Uh, but you know what? That's totally not this moment,
It's
right?
not relevant
So,
right now.
so what you can take from this conversation is like in every summer, like, I've been dealing with or learning a lot about the tutoring industry because we have so many tutors on the platform. They're packed in the summers, especially now. Like they are just like summers are when kids get caught up. They, that is opportunity time for them. And so what we want to do, which answers your question in a different way, is that what's going on right now? Like right now, parents are frenetically trying to find activities for their kids, realizing they've missed a lot of education or redirected their education. Planning to have a big group with a bunch of people inside together is not wise, nor safe, nor predictable. We can't do that. So we have to say, okay, how can we be agile in our businesses in this moment, right? What can we do? Well, for one, like just to your point of your question, people aren't gone as much. All of my private students that are normally off vacationing, they're all here right now, right? I'm still teaching at full capacity of private lessons. I know I can't do camps and I don't have the bandwidth to do much else. But if I did, I'd be looking at virtual camps, right? To get kids something to do. As a parent, I know my kids need something to do. They need interaction. They need that energy of connecting with other people. So I would build some kind of product for that, right? And I think the takeaway from that is what's going on right now. The separate idea is, our friend Tony Parlapiano, who I think was here earlier, have a billing model that accommodates summer breaks, right? Charge a flat rate and plan for it to where you charge the same around. If that's something that's a real issue, charge the same year round. That's another way to deal with these lulls. If that's something that causes a real problem for you, is look at the issue, create, whether it's a plan for how you're going to generate revenue, or maybe plan to be like, I know summers are going to be pretty chill, so I'm going to just have a flat rate, maybe subscription-based billing model, and I'll just plan to have a little more time off in the summer to do awesome stuff, like be with your family, be with your friends. So it's a great question. And it's one that will take extra sensitivity right now than it normally would because of everything that's going on. And it's, this summer is just going to be really different. And for me, I found this summer is going to be busy teaching. But I'm glad you asked that. And I look forward to hearing what's going on with you too. We have just a little bit of time left. We're going to take, we're definitely have to take this next question. Thomas asked, Thomas, I'm not sure I know you very well, but I'm glad you. What are some ways, Rob, you could collect from your Zoom students who used to pay by cash? I did not pay Thomas to ask this question, by the way. But if you have any quick thoughts on that, I don't want to, I always promise not to really promote my company on this platform. But Rob, can you speak to that in 30 seconds or less?
I use Fons.com and it changed my life.
Oh, bless you. We can move on. I feel so guilty even doing that, but it was next. Yes, definitely, Thomas. Come join us in the world of Fons. That would be that would be awesome. Let me just check here, make sure I'm not, because I've got questions coming in from a bunch of different spots. Roberto, I see yours. Roberto's. This question's really awesome in that he is a new friend. I've known him for a while, but he's in LA. And again, situational awareness. He is in an environment where the best thing he can do for his business, right, for marketing towards high-paying clients, market at a high rate, right? Mm-hmm. And Roberto's already doing really cool stuff. He's working with a school with a lot of students and providing them a really affordable value. He does the hard work of really reaching out in the community, teaching a bunch of people. He's already busy. He's looking to get into that LA scene of getting a quiver of super high paying clients, right? I think I had told him all about you, Rob, because he's in the environment for it, right? He's in that spot where it would work perfectly to go for that, bespoke service for where he's living. Yeah. So hopefully you've kind of gotten some of that, Roberto, and I'm glad you're here. Did you want to speak to that question? Any ideas for marketing towards those new clients, Rob?
Yeah, I think charging a high rate broadcasts that you're at least trying to deliver extra value to your students, and you're um, uh, ready to help someone with a lot of money have the best experience possible, right? Because the people who have a lot of money, they don't want their time wasted. They want their child to have the best education possible. So, if you can do things like come to their house to teach, that is often a big perk, and you can charge a lot of money to do that. I charge my hourly rate to travel to student houses, or I used to before the pandemic. Um, uh, and so that's a big bonus. When there isn't a deadly virus running around, I also have these great student concerts that my students really enjoy. I prep materials for my students where if they want to learn a new song, I'll write out a chord chart, not just print out a crappy one off of ultimateguitar.com, but I'll actually type it out in Microsoft Word, and it's got some extra information in it, like strumming patterns and chord duration, chord diagrams, how to fret the chords and everything. So there's all this prep work that I do for my students, and you can broadcast that to people, so that you can't just raise your rates and that's it. You also need to be marketing yourself as someone who really is going to give someone the best experience possible.
And you do. Like, that's the thing, is like, I've seen it forever. You love what you do and your clients love you. Like, it is a cycle that just keeps working, right? And you get to have a cool life and raise a great family and do your deal, and your clients get to be a part of that magic. Like, so many people don't have magic in their lives, right? And that's something that I was made aware of as I started dealing with the same thing. I'm seeing my clients' homes when I'd go into their homes, like ultra successful people that don't have the spark of like love and magic in their homes, right? And that's a reality of our culture. And you give that to people. And that's like, Ben Brill had asked this great question. I wish we could just go and do this for a long time because there's so many great questions. I'm sorry we can't answer them all, but he'd asked about methods, right? What's your teaching method? And which is great, because it'd be really fun to talk about that, and we'll do that another time. But the methodology that you choose and that I choose too is usually bespoke per client, right? We're in that moment. But the value proposition is really the experience, right? And what they walk away feeling like after they've had a lesson, right? It is a bright spot in their week, right? It is something they really covet, they value, they protect that time because it's meaningful. And I think that's the thing you've been able to deliver for so long. And that's what I aspire to deliver too, right? Is like, hey, here's some magic in your week. And I think that transcends the idea of method. And because we're not like college professors trying to, I initially imagined myself teaching at like one of the great guitar programs, having won the GFA competition, which is happening right now, and, teaching the best players in the world. And that is not my path. My path was connecting with young people and giving them this great experience and a lot of joy, which I think you do too. And I think that's just, that's what you've done so well. And I really appreciate it. So to everybody, this has been a really awesome chat. We're almost out of time. I wish we could do this. Rob, I hope we can have you back. I'm going to try. I figured if I get you here, I could get Yori and Joe to come join us too sometime. So
The other members of our mastermind group.
Yes,
Yeah.
which would be really fun. And but before we get off, Rob, I wanted to just ask you, what are you doing all this for? What are your goals? Because obviously we see all this thing going in the right direction. It's got a lot of heart. What's driving you? What drives you? What keeps you putting your energy into this? What would you like to see yourself doing 5 years from now?
Yeah. So there's this whole other part of my life, my emotional life, apart from music. I love music. Music is a big part of my life. Teaching is a big part of my life. I also love the mountains. You know this. I talk about all the time in our mastermind group how much I miss earlier parts of my life where I was able to go out backpacking and rock climbing a lot. I love rock climbing. And I really feel like it's a critical part of my kids' well-being and education is, getting comfortable being in the mountains, going camping as a family. I was lucky to go camping in Yosemite with my family when I was a kid, so I have all this nostalgia wrapped up in it. And so when I daydream about like um, uh, our family being successful, my business being successful, I daydream about being able to take time off to take the kids backpacking, go to City of Rocks, Idaho, my favorite climbing area, and like playing songs around the campfire. I'm like getting choked up talking about this. It's so important to me. So, we've talked so much about money in this meeting, and you emphasized that like you have to love it. And it can be sometimes hard to love a job that's right for you if you're not making enough money. And you made that point. And I might not love this job if I was really trying to make ends meet. But I didn't get into the job just to make a lot of money. And I think that's the critical thing. If you want to charge high rates and try to really make your business successful as a music teacher, you have to have some other goal in mind besides just making a lot of money, and it needs to be a goal that really will be, I think, fulfilling, aside from just like buying nice cars or something. I think most
Sure.
musicians get that. So yeah, I
Obviously.
want to go camping with my kids.
Yeah. Well, I hope you get to as much as you would like. Rob, thank you so much for being here. I wish we could just keep going and have. There's so much we can talk about. Hopefully, you'll come back and join us again. Everybody that was here today, thank you. Wow, what a great turnout. These questions were so great. I will try to kind of jump. Any ones that didn't get answered, I'll try to jump in and answer myself via a message later on.
I will
Uh,
too.
but hey, thank you everyone for coming. Rob, thanks for being here. Let's do this again. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye.